Hey everybody, welcome back to the Bourbon Note. I'm Ben, got a brand new bourbon on the bar, let's get into it. All right, on the bar today we've got BAM 2XO's Oak Series French Oak. So this is a product from 2XO, which means 2 times oak, so they're double oak products or oak finish products from Dixon Deadman, formerly of Kentucky Owl. I don't know a ton about this brand in particular. I have had one of the other ones. I know they kind of have like their core releases that kind of run in that like $100 price range, some a little bit more expensive. This one runs closer to that $45 to $50 range. So they have the French oak, which is this one here, and then they have an American oak as well. So this is more of their kind of less expensive bottling. And this one is, just like the name would suggest, it's finished with French oak. And from what I gathered, it's more of a, like maybe a stave finished or like, you know, adding like oak spirals, not a secondary barrel finish. So comes in at, what do we got here? 92 proof. On the nose, right off the bat, it's a little thin. But there's some like butterscotch, maybe toffee kind of sweetness coming off of it. Definitely a little butterscotchy. Sweet oak. There's a little bit of youth kind of jumping out here. Comes across as a little youthy, in a way. It's got nice aromas, but I kind of feel like they're struggling to come through. So I don't know if this can be like a situation where the proof is a little too low. But it does have a nice oak spice to it, a nice little spicy bite to it on the nose. Well, let's get into the palate, see what happens. Cheers. That's a little thin, to be honest. It comes across, the oak spice is definitely there, so that secondary oak finishing comes through. But I gotta tell you, that's kind of all I got on that first sip. It seemed thin. There wasn't much going on with the mouthfeel, not much for viscosity. And honestly, I'm not pulling a ton of sweetness off of that first sip. But it does have kind of some nice spice to it, just like the nose did. That butterscotch and toffee note I was getting on the nose didn't seem to come through on the palate. Maybe on the next sip here we'll get a little bit of that, but on that first sip, it feels a little lacking. Like it doesn't come across as something that had a, you know, a secondary oak influence to it, other than the fact that there is that oak spice, if that makes any sense. Yeah, I got to get in for another sip here. So on that second sip, not much changed, honestly. This is mostly oak and pepper spice. It's very, very light, almost, again, a little flat. Tiny bit of cinnamon, maybe. But I'm just not getting much sweetness at all. So if you're not into sweet bourbons, this might be one you want to try. This is just all oak and spice. I hate to repeat myself, but that's really all I'm getting from it. Yeah, it just, I don't know. This is not coming across as well-aged or well-finished, in my opinion. It's not bad. There's nothing wrong with it in the sense that it's a bad whiskey. It's certainly not a bad whiskey. But if you like sweet bourbons, this is probably not going to be for you, at least in my opinion, based on what I'm getting from it. If you like something a little more tannic, dry, and peppery, this might be right up your alley. This is one, and I know people sometimes get sick of hearing this, but I think this is one maybe where the proof is kind of hindering it a little bit. I kind of get the vibe. Now, I don't know anything about the source of this whiskey, so this is just me telling you what it tastes like to me. It tastes like maybe a very, very basic, kind of no frills, maybe not terribly well-aged bourbon that was finished with something to maybe get it across the finish line. That's the kind of vibe I'm getting from it. Again, not that it's bad, but it just, considering that it was finished with extra oak staves or whatever, you know, pieces of oak they put in it to finish it, it feels like that barely brought it up to a somewhat thin flavor profile. So it makes me wonder what the base whiskey of this is. Let's have another sip here, see if anything changes. Yeah, nothing much changed on that sip either. Yeah, overall, I mean, I think this is very basic.
Basic as
I don't know that this is, it's not complex at all. It's pepper spice, oak spice, a tiny bit of cinnamon. The sweetness that was on the nose, that light sweetness, didn't transfer to the palate. The finish is very short. So, I mean, this doesn't really stand out to me as anything special in bourbon. Again, it's good. I'm certainly not gonna have a problem making my way through the bottle. I'll definitely enjoy, you know, sipping on this, but I just don't think that, I guess maybe I was expecting more with a, you know, French oaked bourbon. And so, I mean, I don't want to say double oak, because I don't know if that's a fair way, because it wasn't aged in a secondary barrel, but, you know, I just, again, like I said before, I feel like this is maybe a pretty weak bourbon that was attempted to make better by finishing it. And that's just what's coming across against. Again, I don't know what the source of this is, but that being said, there is a place for this, I think. I think this is a better served for like a beginner's bourbon, in the sense that it's very, very approachable. I don't want to say smooth in a negative way, but it is fairly smooth. It doesn't have a lot of bite to it as far as ethanol goes. I think it drinks maybe a little under the 92 proof. But it does have that nice kind of peppery oak spice to it. And so I think this would maybe make a nice gift whiskey for maybe a fairly new bourbon drinker, where, you know, it's something a little bit different. Maybe it's a new brand. If you want them to maybe explore something that's not a very, very sweet bourbon, just something that's a little more on the tannic and oaky side without looking for an expensive hyper-aged bourbon, this is probably going to be a good one for that. But for me, I feel like it falls a little bit flat, and I think a lot of that is on the proof and maybe possibly the age of the actual whiskey. And again, I don't know what that is, but it just feels like it's really lacking something. But again, it does have its place. So I don't know. Let me know if you guys have had this. This one's a little confusing to me just because, again, I was expecting a little bit more, and maybe, you know, that's on me for kind of having higher expectations. But at the price point, with a secondary oak influence, just fell a little bit flat, but still a decent whiskey. And at the price point, it's a hell of a lot better than Basil Hayden. So I know a lot of people like to use that as like the beginner's, you know, beginner's whiskey that's a little more expensive and it looks fancy in the bottle. This is way better than that. So I would recommend this for that purpose, for maybe a new bourbon drinker. But I think a seasoned bourbon drinker that's maybe into higher proof stuff, I don't think this is gonna hit for them. So anyway, you let me know what you think if you've had this one. Please like, comment, and subscribe. This has been 2XO's Oak Series French Oak on the Bourbon Note. I'm Ben. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next one.